Story this morning in the Montreal Gazette, which kind of caught my eye. It concerns a gentleman by the name of Professor at Concordia, at least he was, named Saad, who's decided, you know what, I had enough of Montreal, had enough of Canada. I'm moving to the U.S. And happy to do so. So Saad is on the line. Professor, thank you for being with us. Let me begin by, first of all, a little bit of context here. You were at Concordia for how many years?
32 years. I joined straight out of my PhD in 1994.
Okay, and all of a sudden now, this decision you made didn't happen all of a sudden, but why have you decided to walk and leave, and not only leave Concordia, people do, but move full-time to the U.S.? What brought this on?
Several reasons. First, and I'm not just trying to be courteous here, I'm being truthful. I've had a wonderful career at Concordia. They've given me all of the freedoms that one could hope for as a professor to pursue any research that I wanted, to write about whatever I wanted. But number one, even though I've been in Canada since the 1970s, we're originally from Lebanon, I've never acclimatized to the weather here. And as I get older, I'm even less open to, facing the dreadful winter. So that was number one. Number two, I'm not a huge fan of the Quebec and Canadian governments taking most of the labor of my mind as parasitic taxation. If I can go to a place where I pay astoundingly lesser taxes, it's certainly going to help my future and that of my family. Weather, parasitic taxation, and a great opportunity at the University of Mississippi said that it was time for me to go to the next chapter of my life.
Okay, so let me go back to something else, because maybe I've kind of gotten this wrong. You have been a very vocal critic of policies under Justin Trudeau, specifically with respect to transgender rights, et cetera. Your book, by the way, you have a book called Suicidal Empathy. How long has this been out?
Suicidal Empathy came out exactly a week ago, and it's been number one in Canada across all books for much of the past week.
Okay, so in that book, correct me if I'm wrong, you basically argue that Canada, you say under Justin Trudeau, is one of the clearest examples of, for all intents and purposes, suicidal empathy in the world. Can you explain what that means to you? What is suicidal empathy?
Right. Thank you for that question. Look, empathy is a wonderful virtue to possess. We are a social species, so it makes sense for you and I, Aaron, if we wish to have a meaningful conversation, I need to put myself in your mind and vice versa. So empathy is wonderful. But like most things in life, it has to be well modulated. Aristotle explained to us several thousand years ago that too little of something is not good, too much of something is not good, and that also applies for empathy. If you have no empathy, you're a psychopath. But if you have hyperactive empathy that is invoked in the wrong situations toward the wrong targets, you end up with suicidal empathy.
So you argue that those wrong targets are which ones?
Caring more about illegal immigrants than you care about American vets, caring more about Mother Earth than reproducing, because to reproduce would mean that you are increasing carbon footprints, caring more about women with penises than you care about biological women. And there are countless other such examples would be, here's another one, caring more about recidivist felons than about their victims. All of these examples stem from dysregulated empathy.
Okay, that's one very giant pot of a lot of things that, you're saying we are overly, or as you just said, hyper empathetic about. If we go back to 2017, which is, I think, what brought you into the spotlight, if I've read this correctly, you were opposed to Bill C-16 that was introduced back then. That's the legislation that added gender identity and gender expression to the Canadian Human Rights Act. That was under a government then that's no longer in power. Has there been a change? Has the one that you've noticed that would have changed your mind on this or not?
Unfortunately, it hasn't. That's another reason why I thought it was maybe time for me to go and pursue my professorial career elsewhere. Canada is fully parasitized by suicidal empathy. And let me give a concrete example from academia. Last year, the University of Waterloo, which is the equivalent of Caltech or MIT in the U.S., right? A very strong STEM university with very strong engineering and computer science background, put out 2 calls for Canada Research Chairs, which are the highest professorships that the Canadian government endows. And they were looking for 2 types of artificial intelligence professor. For one of the calls, the professor that could apply had to be transgender, non-binary, gender fluid, or two-spirit. That's probably not the best way to organize science.
You're kind of making the DEI argument in the U.S., right, in a sense, by saying that?
I am. Diversity and inclusion and equity is a cancer to the dignity of meritocracy. That doesn't mean that if people do not start with equal opportunities, we don't correct that. There was a time when women were not allowed on university campuses, and we fixed that. We actually now have a preponderance of women in university campuses. So I'm not suggesting that there aren't at times institutional barriers. There are, but to argue that we are going to be adjudicating academic excellence that keeps a country competitive within the intellectual landscape based on whether I'm non-binary or two-spirit is probably, again, not the best way to organize science.
So, as I hear you say that, I think to myself, where do you draw that line? You brought up a wonderful example, right, of women who had been in the past held back. So we recognize that. We say, okay, let's fix that. We did. Why can't the line be expanded to accommodate other people?
Well, it depends what the accommodation looks like. So, for example, if you now start arguing that the scientific method is only one way of knowing, but there are alternative but equally valid ways of knowing because you want to elevate indigenous voices, that is not a good idea, right? There's a way for us to ensure that we live in a fair society without murdering truth, right? There is no, I'm Lebanese Jewish. There is no Lebanese Jewish way of doing evolutionary psychology. There's only evolutionary psychology. The scientific method frees us from the shackles of our personal identities. So yes, there is a place for the government to intervene and help people who have been structurally marginalized, but that doesn't mean that we create a new ethos within the university where we decolonize and indigenize science.
Well, so to that point, you said structurally marginalized. If you deal with indigenous people in this country who have been structurally marginalized and continue to be, what would be the solution to allow those people to be able to fill some of those jobs, professorships, et cetera, in your mind?
Give them equality of opportunities. I came within my lifetime. This is not going back 250 years ago when there was a battle between the Iroquois and French Canada. I came from an imminent execution in Lebanon. My parents were kidnapped by Fatah and tortured. My grandparents escaped Syria. My brother-in-law's family escaped Alexandria. So I don't have to invoke intergenerational trauma. It's the trauma of my childhood. We came to Canada with nothing. Canada was kind enough to accept us, but we had the dignity to pull up our shirts and say, we will take it from here, and here I am talking to you on the radio. So victimhood might be part of your heritage, and that's perfectly fine. But what defines your dignity is that you overcome it.
I would ask you, because we're going to run out of time, this idea then, so you've been in Canada for, you said, more than 30 years.
Yes.
You look back at the time you spent here. This is the country that educated you, employed you for 3 decades, gave you a platform that you've now become internationally known for. Is there no gratitude here? I mean, why not simply stay here and try to make the system better?
There is infinite gratitude, but how far does my gratitude go? I'm not a free individual that can exercise. Once you accept me in, I'm bound to be a prisoner to this country. There is no such thing as free market. If another society says, we want to welcome you and we're not going to steal 60% of your income, I don't have the dignity to do that. Aaron, I've had to walk around with protection because of the positions that I've taken precisely to protect Canadian values. I think I've done my dues, and maybe it's time for people to say, thank you for your services and best of luck down south.
Protection from what? So when you say you've had to walk around with protection, what was that attack or perceived attack on you?
Well, you can pick a long list of potential threats, but when you, for example, are a high-profile Jewish professor who comes out in defense of Jewish causes and of Israel, it might not go very well for you.
But there have been others subject to the same thing. That's sadly the world we're living in right now. I imagine that will change at some point as well, but that's not the reason you're leaving.
I mean, there are certain realities in Montreal that have made it a bit less friendly for people with my religious heritage. I can tell you that in the south where I'm moving to, There are a lot of lesser threats. I was once, by the way, threatened, death threat, while walking with my then 10-year-old son. When I went to see the police and detectives were placed on that particular case, they told me, well, maybe you shouldn't be talking about such things. And in any case, if he comes back again, then just call 911, because I don't have the personal agency to actually carry an arm to protect myself.
Right.
Because when the guy is trying to come and knife me, I'm sure that he'll stop, and I'll say to him, please, wait a second. Let me call 911.
Okay, I get it.
And only after that, knife me.
Okay, I have to wrap up. I just want to go to one quote that you did say, and I just explain this, and we'll wrap this up. You wrote, "My inner spirit is American." What does that mean?
I believe in complete personal freedom, and therefore, to that extent, entrepreneurial meritocracy, can-do attitude is much more aligned in that sense with the U.S. than it is with Canada, and that does not take away the fact that I love Canada and will always honor it.
Okay, we will leave it at that. I wish you the best, and I thank you for the time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers. Powered by North by Northeast Music Festival. Taking place June 10th to 14th across Toronto. iHeart New Music. Stream now, online, on your smart speaker, and preset on the free iHeartRadio app.